The Nebraska wind in the fall of 1882 carried nothing but grit and broken hopes. Ada Rose stood at the boundary of her land, one hand shading her eyes from the cruel sun, the other gripping the rough post that marked the line between clinging on and giving up. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. What had once been fields of green when she first arrived as a hopeful bride now lay brittle and brown, crunching under her boots, like the dreams she'd buried with Eli McKenna. Behind her, the weather-beaten house groaned against the gusts, its gray boards warped from seasons of neglect. Eli had built it with his own 2 hands, swearing they'd add more rooms as their family grew. Now it sagged a crooked monument to promises cut short. She'd tried to mend it, but a widow's strength couldn't fight back the prairie forever. "Mama, the barrels are near empty again," called 7-year-old Tommy Lee from the doorway. His thin voice cut through her thoughts. The boy had Eli's dark, steady eyes, but where his father's once shone with faith, Tommy's carried the tired look of a child who already knew the world could snatch away what you loved most. "I'll draw more after supper," Ada answered, steadying her tone. The well was running low, but Tommy didn't need to know that, not yet. She would find a way, just as she had every day since that awful morning 14 months back when Marshall Tate had ridden up hat in hand with news that shattered her. The Mason Gang. Even now the name twisted her stomach with grief and rage. They had murdered Eli for little more than $20 and his father's silver watch. A man's life, a boy's father, a woman's anchor, traded for scraps. A dust devil whirled through the yard past the chicken coop where only 3 hens remained. The others had been traded in town for flour and salt. Every trip to Buck Hanley's general store became a trial, keeping her head high while whispers buzzed behind her. Poor soul, she'd overheard Cora Kane say just last week. "Pride won't keep food on her table," Hattie Mae had replied, voice thick with pity. "She'd do better to sell out to Harlon Pike and head back east. A woman alone out here, it just ain't right." Ada's jaw clenched. Back east. As if she had anywhere to return to. Her parents had disowned her the day she chose Eli, the dreamer, who'd staked everything on this hard stretch of land. This patch of soil was all Tommy had left of his father's legacy. The rhythm of hoofbeats pulled her eyes to the horizon. Out of the shimmering heat came a lone rider, shoulders broad, moving with the easy seat of a man born to the saddle. She knew that silhouette. Cole Boon. Her heart wrestled the same uneasy mix it always did when he appeared gratitude tangled with nerves. Cole had ridden with Eli back in the cavalry, both men chasing fortune in the unforgiving West. Where Eli had been quick to laugh, Cole was sharp-edged and silent. He'd stood stone-faced at their wedding gray eyes, unreadable as he wished them well. After Eli's death, Cole had shown up one day with a load of firewood. Split, stacked, and gone before she could thank him. Since then, he came by every few weeks, never lingering, never accepting coffee or a meal, just fixing what needed mending. A rope for the well. Loose boards on the porch. Always scanning the horizon as he worked, as if trouble was bound to come riding. Afternoon. "Mrs. McKenna," he called, tipping his hat as he reined in near the fence. Dust settled around his paint horse as tough and weathered as its rider. "Mr. Boon, Ada," answered, smoothing her apron. "Didn't expect you today. Noticed your fence was down on the north pasture yesterday." He swung down in one smooth motion, already pulling tools from his saddlebags. "Best to fix it before your stock wander." "Her stock. All 3 of them." Ada bit back a bitter laugh. "I appreciate it, but I can manage." "I'm sure you can," he said, not unkindly, already crouched at the broken posts. but I'm here now." She watched his scarred, capable hands work with practiced ease. He shed his jacket shirt, stretching across his back as he wrestled a stubborn post. His presence felt both steadying and dangerous, like a guard dog that might one day turn. "How's the boy?" he asked without looking up. Growing like a weed outpacing his clothes, Ada replied, hesitating. Then she added, "He's been asking to learn to ride." Eli was going to teach him. Eli had planned to teach him. Cole Boon's hands went still for a heartbeat. "I could show him if you've no objection." The words caught Ada Rose off guard. In all his visits, Cole had barely given Tommy Lee more than a polite nod. "That's mighty kind of you. But I couldn't impose no imposition," he cut, in driving a nail with 3 sure strikes. "A boy's got to know how to handle a horse in this country." Mr. Boon Tommy had stepped out on the porch, his eyes bright with excitement. "Did you bring your horse the paint one?" A shadow of a smile tugged at Cole's weathered face. "Storm's tied up by the fence, son. You can look, but don't spook him. He's fussy with strangers." Tommy scrambled down the steps, then stopped glancing back at his mama. At Ada's nod, he edged toward the horse, careful as a colt, trying to hide his eagerness. Mama Widow Lyle had whispered at church last month, nodding toward Cole's retreating figure. His wife took sick in the spring. "Gone before summer," someone else said. He went half mad with grief. Vanished into the hills for weeks. Came back different. Quieter, if such a thing was possible. Ada had tucked that gossip away with the few facts she knew of Cole Boon. It explained the shadows in his eyes, the way he held himself apart. 2 broken souls circling each other out on the vast, lonely prairie. The sun slid low, spilling amber, and rose across the horizon. Cole finished with the fence and gathered his tools. Almost without thinking, Ada stepped toward the house, then called back, "Mr. Boon, would you? We were about to have supper. Nothing fancy, beans and cornbread. You're welcome to join us." He froze back, still turned. For a moment she thought he might accept that he'd finally break the rhythm of their guarded dance. But when he turned, the walls were back in his gray eyes. "Appreciate the offer, ma'am, but I best be heading. Weather's turning." She glanced up at this clear sky, knowing well what he meant. In a town where gossip traveled faster than wildfire, a widow's name was fragile. A single supper shared with a lone man could ruin what little she had left. "Of course," she said, her own voice tight with disappointment. "Thank you for the fence." He swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then paused, reaching into his jacket. "Almost forgot. Picked these up at Buck Hanley's." He handed down a small cloth sack. "Seeds for your kitchen garden. Thought you might want them come spring." Before she could reply, ask how he'd known her garden had failed, or insist on paying him back. He had wheeled Storm, and was already riding into the fading light. Ada stood there, clutching the seeds, watching him disappear over the rise. The weight of the little sack felt heavier than it had any right to be laden with meanings she didn't dare unravel. Mama Tommy appeared at her side. "Why doesn't Mr. Boon ever stay? Don't he like us?" She pulled him close, her arm around his shoulders. "I think he likes us just fine," she said softly. "But folks have different ways of showing they care." As they walked back to the house, Ada couldn't shake the thought that Cole Boon's distance was less about shielding her name and more about shielding his own heart. She couldn't say from what, but as she tucked the packet of seeds into her apron, she wondered if spring might bring more than vegetables. The wind picked up, rattling the windows, reminding her of all the repairs still waiting. But for now, she had a patched fence seeds for planting, and the strange comfort of knowing someone was keeping watch over them, even from afar. In the harsh math of frontier living, that was more than most widows could claim. The news came on a Tuesday, delivered by Amos Tate, the banker's jittery clerk who seemed built for everything except bad tidings. Ada watched from the kitchen window as his buggy rolled up dust billowing like a warning before he even reached her gate. Mrs. McKenna Amos stammered, sweating under his hat. "Mr. Pike sent me. He asked me to deliver this." He thrust a folded paper at her as if it might bite. "There's been a development concerning your property." Ada's fingers shook as she unfolded the page. The legal words swam, but the meaning was clear enough. Mineral rights. Prior claim. 30 days to contest. Harlon Pike, the wealthiest rancher in the territory, and flush with his uncle's eastern inheritance, was claiming her land through some dusty clause in the territorial charter. Mr. Pike wishes me to say Amos went on blotting his brow that he's prepared to make you a generous offer. Enough for you and the boy to start anew, perhaps back east somewhere more comfortable. Comfortable. Ada repeated the word bitter in her mouth. "Tell Mr. Pike," she said coldly, "that I'm perfectly comfortable right where I am." After Amos hurried away, Ada sank into Eli's old chair, the letter crumpled in her fist. 30 days. 30 days to fight a man who owned half the county. 30 days. That's all the time Ada Rose had to find a lawyer she couldn't pay to fight a man who owned half the county. The walls of her small home seemed to close in, pressing on her chest. For a fleeting moment, she allowed despair to wash over her. That afternoon, she hitched the wagon for the weekly ride into town. Tommy Lee sat at her side, chattering about the hawk he'd seen circling their chicken coop, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering over them. Ada envied that innocence, even as she steeled herself for what awaited at Buck Hanley's store. Cedar Ridge stretched along Main Street like a tired hound sprawled in the sun. False front buildings with peeling paint stood watch over the dusty road. Ada kept her gaze straight ahead, guiding the team past the saloon where a few early drinkers lounged on the porch. Their talk hushed as she passed. Buck Hanley's store smelled of brine leather, roasted coffee, and coal oil. Once that scent had promised plenty. Now it reminded her of everything she could no longer afford. Mrs. McKenna Buck greeted from behind the counter, his face carefully neutral. "What'll it be today?" Ada slid over her list flour salt, a small tin of lard bare survival. As Buck filled her order, she heard hushed voices by the fabric bolts. "He's already sent his man, Cora Kane," whispered to Hattie Mae. "Harlan says it's really for her own good. Poor thing can't keep on like this." Hattie Mae sighed. "Seems cruel right before winter." "Oh, Harlan's not heartless," Cora insisted. "He's offered more than a fair price. Too fair if you ask me. A woman in her state can't afford to be choosy." Ada's hands tightened around her purse. A woman in her state, as if widowhood were some sickness to pity. "That'll be $2.30, Buck said louder than needful, his eyes holding a flicker of sympathy that stung worse than scorn. Ada counted out the coins, aware that every gaze in the store was fixed on her. "Mama, can I have a penny candy?" Tommy tugged at her skirt. "Not today, sweetheart. But you promised I said not today, Tommy." Her sharper tone made him step back, brown eyes wide with hurt. The silence in the store was suffocating. Face-burning, Ada hurried him toward the door. Behind them, the whispers swarmed like flies. Outside, she nearly collided with Cole Boon, who was tying Storm to the rail. His steady hand caught her elbow, gray eyes flicking over her flushed face and Tommy's downcast expression. "Mrs. McKenna," he said, tipping his hat. Then, glancing at Tommy, added simply, "Boy." "Mr. Boon." Tommy's mood brightened. "Did you see Mr. Hanley's got a new saddle in the window, silver conchos and everything?" "That. So." A hint of warmth softened Cole's features. He reached into his vest, drew out a penny. Go on. Get yourself something sweet. Share with your mama." Tommy looked up for permission. At Ada's reluctant nod, he darted back inside. "You didn't need to do that," Ada said quietly. "Boy wanted candy." Cole shrugged, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Everything all right?" She nearly laughed. Nothing had been all right for 14 months. Instead, she forced out fine. "Thank you." His gaze lingered, as if he could see straight through her walls. "Word is Pike's stirring up claims about land rights. News don't take long to travel in a town this size. You got anyone speaking for you lawyer-wise? I'll manage," she said too firmly. "I always do." Something flickered across his face. Frustration. Maybe disappointment. Pride makes a cold bedfellow, Mrs. McKenna. Before she could reply, Tommy burst back out, clutching a paper bag of peppermint sticks. "Look, Mama, Mr. Hanley gave me extra 'cause I was polite." The ride home was quiet, save for Tommy's happy sucking on candy. Ada's mind churned with Cole's words. Cora Kane's smug whispers and the crumpled legal notice in her pocket. As the wagon crested the rise overlooking her land, she pulled up short. 3 riders circled her house hooves, tearing through what little was left of her garden. Even from a distance, she knew the hulking frame and black hat of Silas Holt Pike's foreman. "Tommy," she said, voice tight, "get in the back. Stay down. But Mama, do as I say. Now." She eased the wagon forward, knuckles white on the reins. The riders turned at the sound of wheels. Silas grinned, tobacco-stained teeth flashing. "Afternoon, Mrs. McKenna. Just looking around. Mr. Pike wanted us to size up the property for the sale." "There won't be any sale, Mr. Holt. Now get off my land." "Your land," sneered a pale-eyed rider, Clyde Webb. "That's what's in dispute, ain't it? Far as I hear, it'll be Pike's soon enough. Until a court says otherwise, it's mine. You're trespassing." Silas nudged his horse closer, so near she caught the stench of whiskey on his breath. "Now, ma'am?" "No need for trouble, ma'am." Silas Holt drawled, reins loose in his thick hands. "We're just carrying out orders. A smart woman would know which way the wind's blowing. Take Pike's money and be on your way while you still can." "And if I don't?" Ada Rose's voice stayed steady, though her heart pounded. Silas's grin spread ugly and sure of itself. "Well, now that'd be a pity. Things happen out here. Fences fall, wells run dry, cattle vanish. Not the safest place for a woman all alone." "Are you threatening me, Mr. Holt, threatening?" He feigned shock. "No, ma'am. Just stating facts. Out here anything can happen, day or night." The sound of pounding hooves cut the air. All eyes turned as Cole Boon crested the rise at a dead gallop, Storm's hooves tearing up the earth. He reined in, hard sliding to a stop between Ada's wagon and Pike's men, one hand resting easy on the butt of his Colt, though his eyes were cold steel fixed on Silas. "Afternoon, boys." His tone was smooth, but Ada saw the tension in his shoulders, the danger coiled beneath. "Bit far from Pike's spread, aren't you?" "Boon," Silas muttered, smile faltering. "Just doing business. Business gets handled in offices," Cole said evenly, "not in a lady's garden. And I believe Mrs. McKenna told you to leave. This ain't your concern." Cole leaned forward in the saddle. "I'm making it my concern." His words hit the air like stones dropped in a still pond. "So you can ride off quiet, or we can settle this another way. Your call." For a breathless moment, Ada didn't move, acutely aware of Tommy Lee crouched in the wagon bed. The air was thick with the promise of gunfire. Then Silas barked a laugh, sharp and false. "No need for shooting over a simple misunderstanding." He wheeled his horse, his men falling in behind. "We'll be going. But Boone, you can't watch her forever. Pike always gets what he's after." They rode off in a cloud of dust. Cole stayed in place until they vanished beyond the horizon, then turned Storm back toward the wagon. "You all right?" he asked. Ada realized she was trembling. Yes. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You got a gun in the house, he cut in. Eli's rifle, she said. Know how to use it? Her chin lifted. Of course I do. Good. Keep it loaded. Keep it close. His gaze dropped to the ruined garden, his jaw tight. I'll come by tomorrow, help you replant. Mr. Boon. I can't keep except... Yes, you can, he said firmly, then softer. And you will. Eli would have done the same for my June belle if things had turned out different. The mention of their dead spouses hung between them like a ghost neither dared touch. Then Tommy popped up from the wagon bed, eyes wide. That was amazing, Mr. Boon. You scared him off. Cole allowed the faintest smile. Wasn't trying to scare anyone, boy. Just reminding them to mind their manners. When he finally rode off, Ada sat in the wagon, heart heavy. The message had been carved into her soil. Hartley wouldn't wait for courts. He meant to drive her out with fear. Mama Tommy whispered, Will those men come back? She pulled him close, feeling the weight of Eli's rifle under the seat. Maybe. But we'll be ready. That night she set the rifle by the door. Sleep came in fits, every creak of the house, every whisper of wind setting her on edge. On the table lay the packet of seeds Cole had given her. Part promise, part mockery. How could she plan for spring with winter bearing down like a hammer? But when dawn broke over the prairie, she was still standing, still holding on. And she knew one thing for certain, she would replant. She would fight. And maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't be fighting alone. The attack came 3 nights later under a moonless sky that smothered sound and swallowed shadows. Ada woke to the frantic screaming of horses and the bitter stench of smoke. She shook Tommy awake, tugging his coat over his nightshirt. Under the bed. Stay there. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Mama, do as I say. She grabbed Eli's rifle, checked the chamber with practiced hands. It felt both foreign and familiar, like embracing a ghost. Outside, chaos reigned. Fire clawed at the barn figures, moved in the dark, and the cow bawled in terror. Ada pressed against the porch post rifle, ready. That's far enough, she shouted. I've got a rifle and I know how to use it. Laughter cut through the night. Silas Holt stepped into view, his massive shape lit by the flames. Well now, Mrs. McKenna, looks like you've got yourself a fire. Dangerous thing, fire. Spreads quick if no one's there to stop it. 2 more men flanked him, bandanas over their faces. One twirled a torch like a toy. Ada's finger tightened on the trigger, but she knew the odds: 3 men, 1 rifle, and no time to reload. Leave, she commanded, her voice steel. Before this goes further than a burned barn. Burned barn, Silas smirked. Don't see no crime here. Old barns catch fire all the time, especially when folks get too stubborn to take good advice. The man with the torch drifted toward the house. Ada swung the barrel to cover him. 1 more step, and I'll drop you where you stand. You might take one of us, Silas said pleasantly. But then what? Think that boy of yours can reload fast enough to finish the rest? Ice ran down Ada's spine. They knew Tommy was inside. Of course they did. These men had been watching her, learning her weaknesses, circling like wolves. The rifle in Ada Rose's hands suddenly felt too heavy. Here's how it's gonna be, Silas Holt said, his voice calm, almost teacher-like. You're gonna set that rifle down, pack up what's left, and be gone by sunup. Mr. Pike's kindness don't last forever. By morning, no more offer, just a burned-out widow with nowhere to run. The barn roof gave way in a shower of sparks, casting the yard in a hellish glow. Ada's 3 scrawny cattle bolted through the broken fence, disappearing into the night. Months of scraping by gone in minutes. Despair lapped at her like a black tide. Mama Tommy Lee's small, trembling voice carried from inside the house. "Stay in there, baby," she called, fighting back tears stung into her eyes by smoke and fear. Silas grinned, sensing her falter. "Smart woman. No shame in knowing when you're beat. Put that rifle down slow and we'll even help you hitch your wagon." Her arms sagged, the rifle beginning to dip in bitter defeat when the thunder of hooves split the night. Holt's grin vanished as he spun. Cole Boon stormed into the yard like retribution itself, Storm's hooves striking sparks. Cole hit the ground, running his Colt already drawn. The first shot knocked the torch clean from a man's grip, spinning it into the dirt. The second slug shaved Silas's hair, sending his hat flying. "Evenin', boys," Cole said lightly, though his eyes were flint in the firelight. "Bit late for a neighborly call, don't you think?" Silas's hand twitched toward his gun. Cole's revolver shifted dead on. "Don't," he said, voice flat. "You neither. Hands where I can see 'em. This ain't your fight, Toon." Silas growled, but the edge of bluster had soured into something darker. "You made it my fight when you brought it to her door." Cole moved between them and the house, every line of him radiating danger. "Now here's the deal. You saddle up and ride out, or I start shooting pieces off you, and I'll start with what you'll miss most." The barn roared behind them, smoke thick in the air. Ada's breath caught, heart-hammering. Clyde Webb and Roy Mason looked to Silas, shaken. A lone widow was easy prey. One with Cole Boon standing guard was another matter. "Pike won't take kindly to this," Silas spat. "You're making yourself a powerful enemy." "I've had powerful enemies before," Cole answered, voice carrying the weight of battles long past. "Most of 'em are in the ground. Your move, Holt." For a long beat, the only sounds were fire crackling and cattle bawling in the dark. Then Silas spat again, face twisting. "Mount up. This ain't done, Boon. Not by a long shot." They swung into their saddles. Holt turning to snarl, "One last warning. You can't guard her forever." Cole's pistol cracked the bullet, slicing the air so close, Holt flinched, nearly tumbling from his saddle. "Next one won't miss," Cole said coolly. "Now ride." Dust swallowed them. Cole didn't lower his gun until their hoofbeats faded into silence. Only then did he holster it. Ada saw the faint tremor in his fingers, the stiffness in his side. "You're hurt," she said, hurrying down the porch steps. "It's nothing," he muttered, but when he turned, she saw the dark stain spreading under his shirt. Dear God. Jake. She caught herself using his name. Get inside now. He swayed, and she slipped under his arm, taking his weight. He smelled of leather gun smoke and raw survival. Together they staggered toward the house. Mama Tommy stood in the doorway, wide-eyed with fear and awe. "Get the bandages from the kitchen," Ada ordered. "Quick now." She lowered Cole into Eli's chair, the sight almost unbearable. Another man bleeding where her husband once sat. His shirt peeled back, and she bit her lip to stifle a gasp. The bullet had gouged a furrow along his ribs, bloody, but not fatal. Lucky Cole rasped. "An inch to the right and we'd be having a different talk." Ada worked in silence, cleaning and binding the wound with practiced hands. Tommy hovered close, equal parts frightened and fascinated, passing her cloths and staring at Cole like he'd just seen a legend. Why, she asked, finally tying off the bandage. "Why risk your life for us?" Cole was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then low and raw, Eli once pulled me out of a fire in the war. Saved my hide when everyone else left me for dead. I couldn't save him from the Mason gang. Wasn't there when he needed me. But I can do this. I can keep his family safe. "Is that all we are?" she whispered. "A debt to be paid." His gray eyes locked on hers. "You know it's not." The words hung heavy between them, full of danger and promise both. Heat rose in Ada's cheeks, sharper than any flame outside. This was a battlefield more treacherous than Holt's guns. "Mr. Boon," Tommy blurted, breaking the spell. "Was that really Holt from Pike's ranch?" Cole's gaze softened on the boy. "It was. But don't you fret, he won't be back tonight. But the barns can be rebuilt." Cole's big hand rested gently on Tommy's shoulder. "What matters is you and your mama are safe." Ada turned abruptly, needing distance from his steady presence. Through the window, the barn lay in glowing ruins, embers rising into the night. The months of stored hay were gone. The few tools she and Tommy Lee had left reduced to ash. Even if Ada Rose fought Harlon Pike's claim, how could she possibly make it through the winter now? "You're thinking too loud," Cole Boon said quietly from the chair. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Am I? And what am I thinking, Mr. Boon? That you're alone. That it's too much for one person to shoulder." He braced against the armrest, pushing himself upright despite her protests. "But you're not alone. Not anymore. Jake. I'll bed down in what's left of the barn tonight. Keep watch. Come morning, we'll figure what comes next. You can't sleep out there with that wound." "I've slept in worse places with worse holes in me," he said flatly, retrieving his ruined shirt with a wince. "Got a spare in my saddlebags. Tommy want to help me check on Storm. Make sure them fools didn't spook him too bad." The boy leapt at the chance, trailing after him eagerly. Ada found herself alone in a house that suddenly felt both too empty and too crowded. Her fingers brushed Eli's chair, where Cole's blood had left a faint stain. How had everything grown so tangled so quickly? From outside drifted Cole's low voice explaining something to Tommy. Horses, guns, or maybe just how to stand tall when the world was set on fire. The familiar and the foreign braided together, tightening her chest with feelings she dared not name. She'd sworn to keep this land for Eli's memory, for Tommy's birthright. But tonight, with Silas Holt's threats still echoing and Cole bleeding in her husband's chair, she wondered if she was fighting for something else entirely. Something bound up in gray eyes, scarred hands, and the strange gentleness of a hard man guiding a frightened boy. The moon slipped out from behind the clouds, shining on the blackened skeleton of the barn and the figure standing guard beside it. Ada pressed her palm to the cold glass of the window and made her choice. Come morning, she wouldn't fight alone. Holt had been right about one thing: this wasn't over. But he was wrong about another. She was no longer just a widow clinging to memories. She was a woman who had found courage in the barrel of a rifle and the presence of a complicated man who carried ghosts of his own. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Sunday service at Cedar Ridge Baptist had never dragged so long. Ada sat in her usual pew, Tommy Lee squirming beside her, feeling every whisper trail behind them, like smoke from the barn fire. 3 days had passed, and already the tale had twisted beyond recognition. Stayed the night. They say Ruby May hissed to her daughter, Josie Bell, 2 rows back. That Boon man, Josie murmured, bold as brass, protectin' them from ruffians, they say. Is that what they're callin' it now? Ruby May's tone could have soured cream. A decent woman would have gone to the marshal, not taken up with a drifter. Ada kept her eyes on Reverend Amos Granger, though his sermon on propriety felt like a blade aimed her way. In the front row sat Harlon Pike, silent, but commanding his wealth, and Eastern polish making him seem larger than life. When the service ended, Ada tried to slip away, but Reverend Granger caught her at the door. His narrow face wore what he must have thought was fatherly concern. Mrs. McKenna, a word. She sent Tommy toward the wagon and braced herself. Yes, Reverend. I've heard troubling reports about the fire, the fight, and Mr. Boon's involvement. Mr. Boon defended my property from vandals. I don't see the trouble in that. My dear, surely you understand how it looks. A widow leaning on a man with such a reputation. People talk. People always talk. Ada lifted her chin. Maybe they ought to use their tongues for prayer instead. His face reddened. Mrs. Gore, McKenna, I am trying to help. Your place in this community is fragile. Mr. Pike himself has expressed concern. Has he? Her voice went cold as cut glass. How Christian of him to fret when his men are the ones torching barns. That's a grave accusation and without proof. The Reverend glanced nervously at Pike, who was watching with keen interest. Perhaps if you'd consider Mr. Pike's offer a fresh start, proper money, you and your boy could build new. It would be best for everyone. What's best for my boy is keeping his father's land. She stepped to go, but he caught her arm. Pride goeth before a fall, Mrs. McKenna. And you have very far to fall. She ripped her arm free, fury burning away all fear. Then let me fall, Reverend, but kindly step aside while I do it. Outside the October sun offered no warmth against the chill of judgment. Ada helped Tommy into the wagon, ignoring the clusters of townsfolk watching her with pity or scorn. As she took up the reins, Harlon Pike strode from the church, heading their way, with the unhurried stride of a man certain the world belonged to him. Money had made him handsome, well-tailored, and soft-handed, the kind of man who paid others to sweat on his behalf. His eyes were cold as a winter creek. Mrs. McKenna. Harlon Pike tipped the brim of his fine hat, every inch the gentleman on the surface. I heard about your misfortune. Terrible thing. Fires. So destructive. Yes, Ada Rose answered evenly. Especially when they're set on purpose. His smile never faltered. That's a dangerous claim. I hope you've got proof. I have the word of the men who lit the match. They were clear who sent them. But that's the trouble with criminals, isn't it? Can't trust a word they say. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. I'm not a cruel man, Mrs. McKenna. My offer still stands. Even now, 20% above market, enough to set you and your boy up anywhere you'd like. My husband is buried on that land. Mr. Pike, it's not for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price. His smile sharpened. And when the seller's too stubborn, well, the law has a way of favoring those who can afford it. Pride and poverty don't buy much justice. Before Ada could fire back, Cole Boon appeared at her wagon, moving with that quiet, dangerous grace. He'd cleaned himself up for church, though he hadn't stepped inside his dark coat, hiding fresh bandages beneath. Mrs. McKenna. He touched his hat, then turned to Pike-gray eyes, steady. Mr. Pike. Fine sermon, wasn't it? All that talk of bearing false witness gives a man pause. Pike's expression soured. Boon. I heard you've been meddling where you don't belong. Just being neighborly? Cole set his hand resting casual near his gun belt, the gesture more warning than friendly. Helping where I can. Christian duty and all. Is that what you call it? Pike's gaze slid between them, sly and cutting. Interesting interpretation, though I suppose a man like you would have unique perspectives on Christian duty. The reference to Cole's past hung in the air like gun smoke. Ada saw his jaw harden, but his voice stayed level. We all got our crosses, Mr. Pike. Some of us just carry 'em a little more honest. Indeed. Pike stepped back, but his smile promised no mercy. Well, I'll leave you to your neighborly duties. Mrs. McKenna, my offer won't stay on the table forever. Best think on your boy's future. He strode away, the townsfolk scattering, pretending to busy themselves while watching from windows. You shouldn't have come, Ada said softly. It only makes things worse. Things are already worse. Cole swung up on Storm, wincing only slightly. I'll ride with you. See you home safe. The journey back was silent. Tommy Lee dozed in his wagon bed, and the charred skeleton of the barn rose against the autumn sky like a blackened accusation. Ada tried not to think about the hay she couldn't store, the cattle she couldn't shelter. As though reading her mind, Cole said, "I know a man over in Pine Valley, Zeke Callahan. Owes me a favor. He's got extra lumber, maybe some hay he could spare." "I can't." "You can. And you will." Cole cut in firm. Eli would have done the same. Always Eli between them, Ada thought. The ghost that gave Cole permission to help and her permission to let him. But sometimes, like now, she wondered what would happen if they could both let that ghost rest. That afternoon, they worked together without words. Cole showed Tommy how to clear the scorched debris while Ada salvaged what she could. The three of them moved in a rhythm that felt oddly natural, like a family that had done this 100 times before. As dusk fell, Cole built a fire in the yard, contained, controlled, nothing like the inferno that had consumed the barn. They sat around it, sharing the simple supper Ada had made. For a little while, she could almost pretend this was normal. "Tell me about the war," Tommy said suddenly. "Mama says you and Papa were soldiers together." Cole stared into the flames for a long time. "That's right. Your pa and I rode with the 7th Cavalry for a spell." "Did you kill a lot of enemies?" Tommy Ada scolded. But Cole lifted a hand. "It's all right. Boys got a right to know." He chose his words carefully. "War ain't about killin'. It's about survivin'. About protectin' the man beside you and prayin' he's doin' the same. Your pa was the best man I ever rode with, brave, loyal kind, even when kindness was dangerous. How'd he save you?" Tommy leaned in, eyes wide. Cole's gaze lifted across the fire, locking with Ada's. "Supply depot went up in flames. I was trapped under a beam smoke so thick you couldn't breathe. Everybody else pulled back. Figured I was gone. But your pa came back. Smaller man than me, but he got that beam off and dragged me out before the roof came down." "Wow." Tommy's voice brimmed with awe. "Just like you saved us from those bad men." "No," Cole said firmly. "Your mama saved herself. I just leveled the field a bit." "Don't sell yourself short," Ada whispered. "We'd have been in real danger without you." He gave her a small smile that didn't reach his eyes, but she saw he took the words to heart. "You're stronger than you know, Ada." Her name on his lips sent a shiver she hadn't expected. When had she become Ada instead of Mrs. McKenna? When had the careful formality between them slipped into something so dangerously close? As if he felt the same shift, Cole Boon pushed to his feet. "I should go. Check the perimeter before full dark. Jake?" She started rising, too aware of Tommy Lee watching them curiously. "What Pike said about my past?" Cole cut in, his voice flattening. "It's true enough. I've done things. Things that'd turn your stomach. The war didn't end clean for all of us. Some of us kept fighting long after the surrender. Took me years to crawl back to anything civilized. That's not who you are now." "Isn't it?" He barked a bitter laugh. "Other night I near put a bullet in Holt. Would've if you hadn't been standing there. That darkness, it's still in me. Always will be." "We all carry shadows," Ada said softly, stepping closer. Close enough to see the weary lines around his eyes. "What matters is what you do with it." He studied her long, as though weighing whether she was a fool clinging to soft notions, or a woman who had stared her own demons in the eye. "Your husband was a lucky man," he said at last. "Luckier than he knew." Before she could answer, he stepped back, rebuilding the walls around himself. "I'll camp by the road tonight. Anybody comes calling, they'll go through me first." He disappeared into the dusk, leaving Ada by the fire with her boy, and a heart full of questions she couldn't voice. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, lonely and fierce. She knew the sound. Mama Tommy whispered, "Do you like Mr. Boon?" "Of course I like him. He's been kind to us." "No." Tommy's young face tightened, searching for words. "Do you like him the way you liked Papa?" Ada knelt, brushing his hair back. "Your Papa was special son. What we had that doesn't come twice in a lifetime." But later, as she tucked him in, she wondered if she'd lied to them both. Because what she felt when Cole Boon's storm-gray eyes met hers wasn't the sweet, steady love she'd known with Eli. It was something wilder, something edged with danger, and it called to her as much as it frightened her. Through the window, she could see the faint glow of Cole's campfire. At the road, his silhouette, a sentinel. He kept them safe from the threats outside, while she wrestled the ones inside voices that said she was betraying Eli's memory, and another voice louder still asking if Eli would want her to be alone forever. Tomorrow would bring more battles. Pike wouldn't quit, and the town's judgment would sharpen. But tonight, with her son safe in bed and a complicated man keeping watch, Ada let herself feel something that was perilously close to hope. The riders came at dawn. She saw the dust cloud first from the kitchen window as she set out breakfast. Not Holt this time, these men wore badges. At their head was Marshal Tate, looking like a man doing a job he wished was anyone else's. "Pack what you need," Cole said quietly, already reaching for his rifle. He'd appeared at the door as if drawn by instinct. "Take Tommy to the canyon. I'll hold him off." "No." Ada set down the coffee pot with steady hands. "This is my fight. I won't run from my own land. They're lawmen, Ada. You fire on 'em and you'll hang." She walked past him to the porch, her chin high, though her heart raced. "Running makes us look guilty." Marshal Tate reined up at the gate. 5 deputies fanning out. He'd aged since the day he brought news of Eli's death, his face lined with compromises. "Mrs. McKenna," he said, touching his brim but not meeting her eye. "I've got papers here. Court order from Judge Kane. You're to vacate the premises till Pike's claim is settled." On what grounds? Ada kept her voice level, though fury churned in her gut. "Mineral rights. Filing dates back to 74. He passed her the folded papers, shame in his eyes. "You've got till noon to clear out." "I'm sorry, Ada. My hands are tied." "Your hands are paid for," Cole said coldly from behind her. "How much did Pike slip you, Tate?" The marshal's face flushed. "Watch your tongue, Boon. You're already on thin ice meddling in legal business." Legal Cole gave a harsh laugh. "This is theft, dressed up in paper and seals." Nevertheless, Tate said, hand drifting to his gun, "The law is the law." "Mrs. McKenna, will you comply peacefully?" Ada scanned the page, the legal jargon swimming before her eyes, until one date cut through the fog. The claim had been filed a week after Eli's death, when she'd been drowning in grief. "This is fraud," she said, her voice like steel. "That claim was filed after my husband's death, after we'd been homesteading 3 years. We have prior rights. That's for the court to decide." Marshal Tate shifted in the saddle, looking uneasy. "In the meantime, you need to vacate. And if I don't, then I'll have to arrest you." His voice carried real regret. "Please don't make me do that. Think of your boy." Mama Tommy Lee appeared in the doorway in his nightshirt, eyes wide with fear. The sight of him small, vulnerable, nearly broke Ada Rose. But then she thought of Eli, of the dreams they had sown into this land of the mornings. He kissed her in this very doorway before heading to the fields. "Marshal Tate says we must leave, sweetheart," she said gently. "But I don't believe that's right." She turned back, her chin steady. "You'll have to arrest me, Marshal. I won't give up my home on Harlon Pike's word." Tate's shoulders sagged. "Ada, please." The lady's made herself clear. Cole Boon cut in, stepping onto the porch, his presence sharp and dangerous. "Question is, Marshal, what are you going to do about it?" The deputies stirred uneasily. They knew Cole Boon's reputation, knew what he was capable of when cornered. Ada saw Tate, calculating was enforcing Pike's eviction worth the blood that might spill. "You've got 3 days, Tate said at last. 3 days to set your affairs, find somewhere for the boy. But come Thursday, if you're still here, I'll have no choice." Marshal 1 deputy started. 3 days, Tate repeated firmly. "Best I can do." They rode away. Ada sagged against the doorframe. 3 days. "How could she fight a crooked system in 3 days? We move fast," Cole said, already planning aloud. "Get you to the county seat. File a counterclaim. We'll need witnesses, folks, who can swear you and Eli filed your papers years back." Ada looked at him. "Jake, you don't have to." "Yes," he said simply. "I do." The morning blurred. Cole rode to nearby homesteads, seeking support, while Ada gathered documents and tried to keep Tommy calm. But by noon, despair washed over her. Even if they reached the county seat, even if someone listened, Pike had money and sway she couldn't match. She ended up at Eli's grave as the sun struck high. The wooden cross weathered but upright, marking where her old life had ended. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to the silent ground. "I'm trying, Eli, but maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe Tommy would be better off somewhere safe. Somewhere that isn't here." Maybe Cole's voice came from behind her, but he wouldn't be home. She turned. He stood with a fistful of wildflowers, hardy blooms of autumn. Kneeling, he laid them with surprising gentleness at the base of the cross. "Eli never shut up about you," he said quietly. "During the war, Sarah, that it near drove us mad. Rain, he'd say, Ada loves the rain. Beans for supper. Ada makes 'em better. Stars at night, not half as bright as Ada's eyes." Despite herself, Ada smiled. He always was a romantic fool. He was, Cole agreed, rising. But practical, too. Once told me if anything ever happened to him, I was to look after you. Made me swear. Last night before we mustered out. Jake, her voice caught. "I failed him once. Let him ride into that ambush alone 'cause I was too drunk to watch his back." The self-loathing cut sharp in his tone. "I won't fail him again. His death wasn't your fault. The Mason gang wouldn't have taken him if I'd been there. I knew they were working that road. Should have warned him. Should have ridden with him. But I was in a bottle instead." His hands clenched into fists. Without thinking, Ada covered his hand with hers. "You can't save someone already gone, Jake. And you can't live every day as penance for what you didn't cause." He looked at their joined hands, something shifting in his storm-gray eyes. "Maybe not. But I can keep my promise. I can keep you and Tommy safe. And what about what you want?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Is this just about keeping a dead man's promise? The air between them crackled. Cole turned his hand fingers lacing with hers. "You know it's not. You've known for a while. I see how you look at me sometimes, Ada, like you're not sure if I'm real or just convenient. I'm real. What I feel, it's been there since the day Eli introduced us. Truth is, I loved you then too. But he saw you first, loved you best, so I stepped back." Ada pulled her hand away, heart hammering. "Don't say more. Not here. Not at his grave." Cole nodded, retreating, rebuilding those walls. "You're right. I'm sorry." The crack of gunfire shattered the valley. Another shot followed, then the sharp sound of Tommy's scream. Thomas Ada's skirts gathered in her fists as she ran Cole racing at her side. They crested the rise to chaos. Silas Holt and 3 men had Tommy cornered by the chicken coop. The boy clutched Ada Rose's kitchen knife in trembling hands, a thin line of blood marking his cheek, where a bullet had grazed him. "Let him go!" Ada screamed, fury of a mother drowning out all fear. Silas Holt turned with a lazy grin. "Well now, look who's back. Just teaching the boy some manners about respectin' his betters. Seems he didn't take kindly to us looking around. You have no right. Got all the right I need?" Holt patted his gun. "See, Mr. Pike figured you might not take kindly to the marshal's order. Thought we'd give you a little encouragement." Cole Boon went utterly still beside her, the kind of stillness that came before blood was spilled. "Let the boy go," he said, voice low, deadly calm. "Your quarrel's with us, not him. My quarrel's with anyone squatting on Mr. Pike's land." Holt's grin widened. "Though I'm glad you're here, Boon. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down later." It happened in a blink. Holt went for his gun, but Cole was faster. His first shot tore through Holt's hand, the pistol spinning into the dirt. The second dropped the man beside him who was raising a rifle. Cole dove behind the water trough as the other two opened fire bullets, chewing splinters from the boards. "Tommy Lee, run to me," Ada cried. But her boy stood frozen in terror. Cole rose, firing with cold precision. Another man pitched into the dirt. The last panicked lunged for Tommy Lee, dragging the child in front of him as a shield. "Drop it, Boon, or the boy." He never finished. Cole's bullet punched between his eyes so close, the powder scorched Tommy's hair. The outlaw collapsed, and the boy stumbled free, sobbing as he ran into Ada's arms. She clutched him tight, her hands searching frantically for wounds beyond the graze. The yard lay strewn with ruin, two dead where they fell. Holt writhing and screaming over his ruined hand, the fourth vanished into the horizon. "It's over," Cole said, kneeling beside them, his voice gentle, though his eyes still hunted the shadows. "You're safe now. Both of you." But Ada knew better. They weren't safe. Not anymore. This wasn't about property lines or paper claims. Blood had been spilled. The reckoning would come. "We have to go," she said, her voice steady, though her heart shook. "Now before Marshal Tate rides back." Cole nodded once. "Pack light. Only what you can carry. I know a place up in the mountains. We'll figure the rest from there." He met her eyes, and she saw the truth plain. From here on they'd be fugitives. Pike would spin this into murder-brand Cole an outlaw and drag her into it with him. "Then we survive," Cole said. "Together." As Ada packed with trembling hands, and Tommy clung to her skirts, she felt the final cords tying her to her old life snap. The widow who had believed in the law, who had trusted neighbors' decency, that woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone ready to trust a scarred man with her son's life and ride into the unknown. Before leaving, Ada put a torch to the house. Flames licked skyward, consuming her past, her dreams, her very name. Better ash than Pike's prize. 3 figures rode into the gathering dusk, Ada, her boy, and the man who had become her shield. When Tommy sagged in exhaustion, Cole lifted him into his arms on Storm's saddle. "I've got you," he murmured, voice rough with more than fatigue. Ada wasn't sure if he meant Tommy or all of them. As the first stars winked through the dark, she cast one last look at the burning homestead. Then she faced forward, following Cole into whatever future lay hidden in the mountains. The cave he led them to was concealed behind rocks and pine, invisible, unless you knew. Inside it opened wide a natural chamber, big enough for horses and people. Smoke hole above shelves carved long ago into stone. Old hideout from less lawful days, Cole admitted, unsaddling the horses by firelight. "There's water at the back. 2 ways out if we need 'em. We'll be safe here a while." Safe. Ada wondered if she'd ever feel that word again. She watched Tommy explore the cavern wonder, already overtaking fear, the resilience of a child who hadn't yet learned how heavy the world could be. Tommy Lee's fear was already fading into boyish adventure, but Ada Rose couldn't shake the sound of gunfire, the sting of blood on his cheek, that breathless moment when she thought she'd lost him. "He's tougher than he looks," Cole Boon said quietly, following her gaze. Takes after his mama. Ada wrapped her arms around herself, shivering, though the fire burned steady. I should never have let it come to this. Should have taken Pike's money and gone. Gone where Cole's tone was firm, not unkind. Back east to folks who turned their backs on you, to some city where you'd be just another widow scrubbing floors. You stood your ground. There's no shame in that. 4 men are dead because of my pride. 4 men are dead because they threatened a child. His gray eyes flared with something dangerous. I'd kill him again without blinking. The stark truth should have terrified her. Instead, it settled in her chest like a strange kind of comfort. In a world where the law had failed them, Cole's violence was the only sure thing left. They stayed 3 days in the cave, slipping into a rhythm that felt almost like family. Cole hunted and scouted, bringing back meat and word of search parties sweeping the low valleys. Ada kept the fire cooked, what little they had, and tried to occupy Tommy with lessons scratched into the dirt. Nights were for stories, Cole's tales of far-off places polished enough to soften the edges for a boy's ears. On the 3rd night, with Tommy asleep in his bedroll, silence pressed heavier than the stone walls. We can't hide here forever, Ada said, staring into the flames. No. Cole cleaned his rifle hands, moving with the calm of habit. Another day or 2, then north. Wyoming, maybe. Start fresh where no one knows us. As what? The question hung in the air. Cousin's hired hand and employer. Or... He set the rifle aside, meeting her eyes. That's up to you, Ada. She thought of all the rules she'd clung to, rules that hadn't saved her, only judged her. Here in this wild place with a man branded an outlaw, she felt more alive than in months of empty widowhood. I'm tired of pretending, she whispered. Tired of playing the grieving widow, the proper lady, the helpless woman. Cole moved closer, careful leaving space, but not distance. Then what do you want to be alive? Free, with someone who sees me as I am, not as some ghost of what I was. Ada. His voice was low, rough. You asked what I was going to say at Eli's grave before the shots. I'll tell you now. He hesitated, then let the words out, raw. I've loved you since the day Eli introduced us. You were in a blue dress with little flowers flower in your hair from bacon. You laughed, and I thought I'd never heard anything so beautiful. Her breath caught. Jake. I never said a word. Never would. Eli was my brother in all but blood, and you loved him. I respected that. After he died, I told myself I was just keeping a promise, looking after his widow. But that was a lie. Every time I came to mend something, every time I saw you fighting alone, I wanted to tell you. What words she breathed. He turned, fully storm-gray eyes laid bare. Get your things. You're mine now. A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth. Ain't pretty. I'm no good with fancy speeches. All I know is I want you and Tommy. Want to build something new, not cling to something gone. Tears burned Ada's eyes. That's why you kept your distance. Didn't feel right. Wanting your dead friend's wife. Didn't feel honorable. He gave a bitter laugh. But maybe honor's a luxury we can't afford. Don't she cut him off, laying her hand over his. Don't cheapen this. What you've done, what you've given up for us, it's worth more than all the honorable folk in Cedar Ridge put together. They sat in silence, fingers laced the fire, crackling between them and the dark pressing close. Finally, Ada spoke the truth she'd been carrying since the first day he'd brought firewood. I want to be yours, Cole. Not because I need protection. Not because we're running. But because somewhere between goodbye and hello, I fell in love with you too. A sound broke from him, half groan, half prayer. Ada, are you sure? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be tied to a man with blood on his hands and a past that won't stay buried. We all have pasts. She thought of the house she'd torched, the life she'd buried. What matters is the future. Our future. The kiss. was inevitable. A collision of loneliness and longing desperation and hope. Cole's hands cupped her face with startling tenderness, as if she might shatter or vanish. Ada leaned into him. The taste of whiskey and smoke lingered on her lips. The solid weight of him a shock after so many empty months. When they finally pulled apart, breathless Ada Rose saw wonder in Cole Boon's storm-gray eyes. "I never imagined you'd I know." She smiled through tears. "Neither did I. But Eli's gone and we're still here. I think he'd want us to find happiness." "Tomorrow," Cole said, voice hoarse with promise, "we'll find a preacher. Make it proper. Legal." "Since when do outlaws care about legal?" she teased softly. "Since they fall in love with respectable widows." His lips brushed hers again, tender this time. "You deserve more than a cave and a wanted man, but I'll spend my life trying to give you the world." A small cough snapped them apart. "Mama. Are you crying?" Tommy Lee stood at the edge of the firelight, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Happy tears, sweetheart. Come here." Ada pulled him close. He settled between them with a child's unshakable trust. "Are we going to be a real family now? You and me and Mr. Jake?" She met Cole's eyes over her son's head. Promise and question burned there. "Would you like that?" she asked. "Yeah." Tommy yawned. "Mr. Jake's teaching me to track and shoot. He tells the best stories, and he doesn't look sad all the time like you do." Out of the mouths of babes, Ada thought. She hugged him tighter. "Then yes, we're going to be a family." "Good." The boy nestled against Cole's side without hesitation. "Can we have a real house too? This cave's fun, but it's cold." Cole's arm wrapped around the boy. "We'll have a house. North of here where the grass is green and the water runs clear. I'll build it myself with a big porch for your mama, a barn full of horses, and the meanest dog we can find." As Tommy drifted back to sleep, Ada caught Cole's gaze. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not just land or legacy, but a father for her son, a partner for herself, and a hope for tomorrow. At dawn, riders moved through the valley below, dogs baying on the wind. Cole returned from scouting, face grim. "Pike's put a bounty on us. 500 on me, 100 on you." Ada blinked, oddly insulted. "Only 100." Cole's laugh cracked, genuine and warm. "That's my girl, always looking for a fight even in bad news." They packed with practiced speed. Before leaving, Ada looked once more at the cave that had sheltered them. In its shadows she had found love, courage, and the will to let go of the past. "Ready?" Cole asked Tommy, already mounted in front of him on Storm. "Ready," she said, swinging onto her own horse. They rode into the morning light, 3 silhouettes against the wide land. Behind lay Cedar Ridge Eli's grave and the ashes of old dreams. Ahead stretched danger, uncertainty, and the promise of something new. Cole began to whistle a tune, easy and defiant. Tommy laughed. Ada found herself smiling too. They were outlaws now, fugitives from a crooked system, but together. And that made all the difference. "Get your things," Cole had said, in the cave. "You're mine now." It wasn't a command anymore. It was a covenant forged in fire and sealed with hope. The sun burned away the mist as they climbed higher. Far behind, hounds bayed on a fading trail. Ahead, the mountains opened wide, full of possibilities. Ada Rose, soon to be Ada Boon, rode forward with her son, and the man who'd taught her that sometimes love doesn't fall like gentle rain. Sometimes it comes like wildfire, burning the old away to make room for the new. The canyon narrowed ahead, red cliffs rising like Judgment's Gate. Cole raised a hand for silence. The wind carried rough laughter, the jingle of spurs on stone. "How many?" Ada whispered, clutching Tommy closer. 4, maybe 5, Cole muttered. His eyes never left the bend. They're waitin'. Must have guessed we'd take Eagle Pass. Is there another way? Not without losing 2 days. Listen. He pointed to a ledge 20 feet up the canyon wall. Get Tommy up there. Whatever happens, you stay hidden. If this goes bad, no. Ada's voice rang with steel. We're not splittin' now. I can shoot you. Taught me yourself. She shifted her coat, showing Eli's pistol at her hip. We face this together, or not at all? Cole studied her, then nodded. All right, but Tommy goes up the ledge. That's not negotiable. They tethered the horses in a stand of juniper. Cole boosted Tommy to the ledge, pressing a derringer into the boy's small hands. Only if someone tries to climb up after you. Aim for the chest squeeze, easy. Tommy nodded, fear and grit mingling on his young face. Ada kissed his forehead, then followed Cole toward the bend. They heard him before they saw him, Silas Holt's voice booming across the stone walls, mocking and cruel. Should have slit that brat's throat when I had the chance, Silas Holt sneered, his voice bouncing between the canyon walls. Would have saved us the trouble of this chase. Pike wants him alive, though, especially the woman. Says he's got plans for her. Ada Rose's skin crawled at the words. Beside her, Cole Boon had gone deadly still, the kind of silence that came right before blood was spilled. Alive don't mean untouched, Holt went on, the sick grin in his voice, plain as day. Plenty of ways to break a woman without killing her. Cole shifted like water sliding over stone, slipping behind a boulder. He flashed 3 fingers, then pointed 3 men, visible, at least 2 hidden. Ada's mouth went dry, but she steadied her breath, recalling his lessons. Steady grip. Clear aim. Breathe out slow. Squeeze, don't yank. I'll draw their fire, Cole whispered. When they turn on me, you take the nearest one, then get back to Tommy Lee. Before she could argue, he stepped out, his voice carrying like thunder. Holt figured you'd still be sucking on that hand I gave you. Gunfire cracked, instantly ricocheting off the stone. Ada Rose spotted a wiry man scrambling for position. She lined up, exhaled, squeezed. The pistol kicked, and the man spun, clutching his shoulder. The woman, take the woman, someone bellowed. The canyon erupted in chaos, bullets whining and rock splintering. Ada fumbled to reload, hands trembling. A shadow loomed above. She fired without thinking, the shot catching the man mid-charge. He toppled backward with a grunt. Down, Cole barked. She dropped flat as his rifle thundered overhead, another outlaw falling. But more were closing in, Holt, barking orders with his bandaged hand. Then Tommy's scream tore through the din. Ada whipped her head up, heart seizing. A 5th man had looped around, climbing toward her boy. Tommy Lee backed against the rock, the derringer dangling uselessly as fear froze him. Cole's rifle boomed the climber, tumbling with a howl, but the momentary distraction cost them. Pain ripped through Ada's ribs as a bullet seared across her side, spinning her into the dirt. She gasped, vision swimming. Ada Cole's roar echoed like thunder, followed by the merciless rhythm of his guns. Through the haze, she saw Holt, charging, face twisted with hate. She lifted her pistol, but his boot smashed it from her hand, slamming into her wound. Agony blinded her. Got you now, witch! Holt snarled, reaching down. The shot came from above. Holt froze, surprise written on his face before he crumpled lifeless. Ada blinked through tears. Tommy Lee stood on the ledge, derringer, smoking in his small hands. Tommy, she whispered, awe and relief tangling in her voice. Cole was suddenly there, gathering her into his arms. How bad? Not deep, she managed. Just messy. He checked quick, binding the graze with strips of his shirt. Painful, bloody, but not fatal. I'm fine, baby, she called upward. I got him. Mama Tommy's voice shook, but pride rang clear, just like Mr. Jake taught me. You did good, son. Cole called back, grim but proud. He swept the canyon, confirming what Ada already knew, 5 men dead. The ambush had turned into a slaughter. His face hardened. "We move, now. Pike will send an army next." They pulled Tommy down the boy, clinging tight to Ada despite her wince. She stroked his hair, whispering, "You saved me, sweetheart. Bravest boy I ever knew." "I was scared," he admitted softly. "But he was gonna hurt you. And Mr. Jake says we protect family." Family. The word burned through Ada's pain, fierce and warm. They rode hard into the wild country, Cole pushing them, until he found a stream cutting through a hidden meadow rocks, giving good cover. "We'll stop here. Let me see to that wound proper." She endured his rough care with clenched teeth. The whiskey burned like fire as he cleaned the graze, then bound it tight with clean cloth. "You'll have a scar," he murmured. "Another one for the collection," she tried to jest, though her voice faltered. His hands stilled. His gray eyes cut into her. "What you did back there, breaking cover for Tommy, was damn foolish." "I know," Cole Boon said quietly. His gray eyes burned with something deeper than anger. "What you did, that's what a mother does. But next time you trust me to handle it, I can't lose you. Either of you." That night, as their small fire crackled low, the weight of their reality pressed down heavy. 7 men dead in 2 fights. The whole territory would be buzzing. Wanted posters would be nailed to every post. Their faces, their names passed from saloon to saloon. "We could ride south," Cole suggested. "Mexico. I know people there. We could vanish where Pike's reach won't follow." Ada rose, shook her head, her gaze drifting to Tommy Lee, asleep against Cole's shoulder. "No, he deserves more than a life hiding in exile. We all do." Then what Cole's voice was blunt, almost weary. Ada had been turning it over all day, a wild thought born of desperation and stubborn hope. "We stop running. We turn the tables." He raised a brow. "Go on. Harlon Pike's the criminal here. Forgery, attempted murder conspiracy. If we can gather proof witnesses, we could take it higher." Cole's mouth twisted. "From who half the town's scared of him? The other half's in his pocket. Not everyone." She thought of Marshall Tate's reluctance, Buck Hanley's quiet sympathy. "There are good folks in Cedar Ridge. They just need someone to stand up first." "That's a dangerous gamble, Ada. Pike's got money and men. We've got neither. But we've got something he doesn't." Her eyes locked on his across the fire. "We've got nothing left to lose. And we've got each other." Silence stretched, long broken only by the crackle of wood. Finally, Cole exhaled. "What did you have in mind?" They talked through the night, shaping and discarding plans. By dawn, they had the bones of a scheme. Risky, maybe foolish, but better than being hunted forever. "I know a federal judge in Denver," Cole said at last. "Judge Hartford. He's no man's puppet. If we reach him with proof, then we need proof." Ada finished. She winced as she sat straighter, her ribs screaming in protest. "No, absolutely not." Cole's voice was flat steel. "I'm not dragging you back into danger. You're not dragging me anywhere," she answered evenly. "I choose to go. There's a difference." They locked eyes over the fading embers, 2 wills clashing. Finally, Cole chuckled short and rueful. "Eli warned me you were mule stubborn. Said it's what he loved most and what drove him half crazy." Eli accepted it. "Can you... Do I have a choice, always?" She reached across the ashes to take his hand. "But I hope you'll choose to trust me as a partner, not as a possession." Cole turned her palm over, tracing the calluses that hard work had carved there. "Partners," he agreed softly. "God help us both." As the sun bled gold over the canyon rim, they saddled up. Ada checked her pistol, ignoring the tug of pain in her ribs. The woman she'd been the dutiful widow clinging to rules and reputation was gone. The woman who remained was forged in fire and ready to strike back. Cole rained storm beside her. His voice was low. "What I said in the cave, get your things. You're mine now." "I meant it, but not like property. You're mine like—" He hesitated, rough man, fumbling with tender words. "Like my heart's mine. Part of me. The best part." Ada smiled through sudden tears. "Cole Boon, are you trying to be romantic?" "Trying," he admitted, grimacing. "You're perfect." She leaned across his horse's neck and kissed him, brief but sure. "And you're mine, too. Same way. Always." Tommy Lee stirred, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Are we going on another adventure today?" "The biggest yet." Cole promised, settling the boy in front of him. "Ready to be brave again. I'm always brave now," Tommy said proudly. "You and Mama taught me." As they rode out, Ada thought of all she'd lost: Eli, the home, the life she'd known. But she'd gained something stronger, a love born of fire, a partner who saw her strength, and a chance to build a new future from the ashes. The canyon opened wide red walls, fading to endless sky. Somewhere ahead lay Harlon Pike, with his wealth and corruption. But there, too, lay the chance for justice, redemption, and freedom. "You sure about this?" Cole asked his horse, pulling alongside. "I'm sure," Ada answered, ignoring the ache in her ribs. And together, three unlikely warriors rode toward the rising sun, bound by blood, love, and determination. The town of Cedar Ridge looked different, cloaked in pre-dawn shadows. Ada tugged her hat low, grateful for the men's clothes Cole had rustled up, and the darkness hiding her features. Cole moved beside her like a panther, every sense tuned to danger. They'd left Tommy Lee in a neighboring valley with one of Cole's old allies, a debt called in from a past he rarely spoke of. "Morrison keeps his ledgers in the back office," Ada whispered. "And Marshall Tate, if he's where I think, maybe we'll get lucky." At the alley behind Main Street, they split. Cole slipped toward the sheriff's office, while Ada crept to Buck Hanley's store. Just where she remembered, the spare key rested under the third flower pot by the back door. She'd seen him pull that key once before, when she'd come early for supplies. Now, slipping inside, the familiar smell of Buck Hanley's store hit her like a memory coffee bean's leather pickle brine. How many times had she walked these aisles as Eli's wife, then as his widow? Tonight she wasn't a customer. She was an outlaw, breaking in like a thief. Only thieves stole. She was here to drag truth into the light. The ledgers were right where she prayed they'd be. Columns of numbers, neat handwriting. And there it was. Payments from Harlon Pike to men all over town. One entry stopped her cold, a fat sum to Judge Kane, the very week Eli died. Her hands shook as she copied the pages, each stroke of the pen proof of conspiracy. A floorboard creaked. Ada rose, spun, hand flying to her pistol. Buck Hanley stood there in his nightshirt, shotgun leveled, eyes wide. "Ada," he breathed. "Lord above. What in blazes are you doing? What I should have done months ago." She kept her hands visible calm. "Digging for the truth about Pike." His grip faltered. "You shouldn't have come back. There's a bounty on your head." "I know." She gestured to the ledger. "Did you know about these payments? Did you know Pike plotted to steal our land before Eli was even cold in the ground?" Buck's face crumpled. "I suspected. But what could I do? He owns half this town. Has men like Silas Holt to do his dirty work. Holt's dead." Ada watched the realization dawn in his eyes. "And so are 6 others who tried to finish us. We're done running, Buck. But I can't do this alone. He hesitated, torn between fear and conscience. Ada pressed. Is that the life you want for your children? Your grandchildren? Living under Pike's boot? Silence stretched. Then slowly the shotgun dipped. What do you need? 20 minutes later. Ada slipped into the night with ledger copies and something more precious. Buck Hanley's word that he'd testify. One honest man in a town of cowards. It was a start. She met Cole Boon at their rendezvous, an abandoned barn outside town. But he wasn't alone. Marshall Tate sat on a hay bale, wrists bound, looking broken, and older than she remembered. Tom agreed to talk, Cole said, without preamble. Seems his conscience finally got the better of him. Ada, Marshall Tate couldn't meet her eyes. I'm sorry. About everything. I wanted to help, but Pike was paying you to look away. Ada cut in, shoving the ledger pages toward him. $300. The week Eli was murdered, blood money. Watson flinched. I didn't know. I thought it was about land, not murder. By the time I realized I was already his man. Not anymore, Cole said quietly. Question is, are you man enough to stand against him now? The marshal's jaw worked, shame etched deep. Then he spoke, voice breaking. The Mason gang. Pike hired him. Letters in his safe prove it. It was supposed to be a robbery, make Eli look like just another victim. But they got carried away. Killed him. Ada's knees nearly gave. She'd suspected, but hearing it plain cut her open. You're certain I saw the letters myself? Tate whispered. Tears streaked through the grime on his face. I've been a coward. Let Eli's killer walk free. Let Pike terrorize you. Maybe it ain't too late to set it right. By dawn, the plan was set. Tate would go back to his office, act normal, and quietly rally deputies who weren't bought. Buck would spread word among the decent townsfolk. And at noon, when Pike strutted into the bank like he always did on Mondays, they'd strike. It's risky, Cole warned, cinching his gun belt. If even one tongue slips, we're finished. Ada checked her pistol, her ribs aching. We're finished anyway if we keep running. At least this way we fight for something better for Tommy Lee. Cole caught her hand. We're not dying today. Not you, not the boy. Don't make promises you can't keep. I've kept everyone I've made to you, he said, gray eyes steady. I'm not stopping now. The morning crept like molasses. Ada took her position on the milliner's roof, a clear view of the bank. Cole slipped into the livery stable across the street. Marshall Tate moved quiet through town, gathering men one by one. At 11:30, Harlon Pike's fancy carriage rolled up, 4 gunmen stepping down. Ada's stomach knotted. They'd counted on 2, maybe 3, 4, changed the odds. But then she saw it. Folks drifting in greater numbers than usual, lingering in doorways, gathering near the square. Buck Hanley had done his work well. Whispers had spread. Noon came with the church bells tolling. Ada watched Marshall Tate walk toward the bank. He faltered as Pike's bodyguard stiffened. For a heartbeat, Ada thought he'd lost his nerve. Then Cole Boon stepped out of the livery rifle, easy in his hands. Marshall Tate straightened voice, carrying across the street. Harlon Pike, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and murder. Pike laughed loud and mocking. You gone mad, Tom. You work for me. Not anymore. Tate drew his gun. Come, quiet. Gunfire split the air. Pike's men went for iron, but Cole was faster, his rifle speaking in deadly bursts. From the milliner's roof, Ada Rose braced her pistol heart, hammering as she picked her mark. She pushed away the thought that these were men she was shooting. This was survival justice in daylight. The fight was short, brutal. 2 of Pike's guards sprawled dead in the dust, another lay wounded, and one dropped his gun hands up. Pike himself crouched behind his fancy carriage fine suit, torn and face streaked with dirt. It's over, Pike, Ada shouted down. Your reign ends today, you! Pike's face twisted with hate. You should have taken the money, you stubborn. That's enough. Cole's voice cut through like steel. He stood over Pike now, gun leveled, gray eyes cold. Ada, come down. Let the law take him. She climbed carefully, ribs aching with every step. The crowd pressed closer, restless. She heard it in their voices, anger, years of resentment boiling over. How many had Pike ruined, cheated, threatened? We cracked the safe, Marshal Tate announced, lugging out a strongbox. Letters, receipts, proof of everything. Ada's hands trembled as she flipped through them. Orders to the Mason gang. Payments. Plans to drive them off her land dated before Eli's death. She lifted her gaze, tears burning, but voice steady. You killed him. You murdered a good man for profit. Business, Pike spat. Just business. Your husband was weak. I offered him a fare. Cole's fist cracked against Pike's jaw, dropping him cold in the dirt. Cole flexed his knuckles, voice flat. That was fair. 3 days later, a wire brought Judge Hartford from Denver. The trial was swift, Tate's testimony. Buck Hanley's ledgers and the letters sealed Pike's fate. Guilty on every count. The sentence, death by hanging. His empire crumbled, stolen lands returned to those he'd robbed. At sunset, Ada stood at Eli's grave, fresh wildflowers in her hands. Tommy Lee wandered among the stones, quiet, while Cole stood steady at her side. She laid the blooms gently on the wooden cross. We did it, she whispered. Brought you justice. Protected our boy. I hope you're at peace now. Cole's hand found hers, warm and sure. He is. Has been since he knew you were safe. Her voice cracked. How can you know? Because that's all I'd ever want, Cole said softly. If it were me down there and you standing here, to know you were safe and happy. A week later, they wed in the little Cedar church. Reverend Amos Granger presided, his voice steady, though Ada could still hear the memory of his old judgments. She had forgiven, but never forgotten. Do you, Cole Boon, take this woman? I do, Cole said, strong and certain. Today, tomorrow, every day after. And do you, Ada Rose, take this man? With all my heart, she answered, cutting him off with a grin. Forever and then some. Their kiss was tender, full of hard-won promise. Tommy Lee cheered the loudest, his face alight with joy, his family whole at last. They rebuilt on Ada's land. Not just a barn, but a fine house with the broad porch Cole had promised. The territory granted compensation for what they endured enough to start fresh. Cole bred horses, teaching Tommy everything he knew. Ada planted the seeds Cole had given her long ago, watching them sprout in soil enriched by ashes. On quiet evenings, they sat together on that porch, the prairie glowing gold under the setting sun. And sometimes Ada caught Cole watching her with that same look of wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe he'd found home. As if he still couldn't believe she'd chosen him. And in those quiet moments, Ada Rose would remember his words from that desperate night in the mountains. Get your things. You're mine now. No longer a command, but a vow of belonging. She was his, yes, but he was hers as well. Along with Tommy Lee, the land, and the life they had forged from ashes. The prairie wind carried the scent of sage and new beginnings. Ada Boone, rancher's wife, mother survivor, knew in her bones she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because a man had claimed her, but because she had claimed herself first, and then chosen to give her heart to a man scarred and complicated, yet worthy of the gift. On the horizon, storm clouds gathered. But Ada no longer feared them. She had weathered worse and come out stronger. Whatever came next, they would meet it side by side, a family tempered in fire, unshaken by fear bound together by love. And somewhere beyond the fading light, the ghost of Eli McKenna finally rested easy, knowing his wife and son were not only safe, but fully alive. In the golden glow of another western sunset, 3 hearts beat as one proof that the greatest love stories aren't found in perfection, but in the courage to begin again. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West, stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you